This one is, am I the astronaut for making my best friend pay rent in a house she never lived in? I hope the body of this story explains all. This was a few years ago now, but I still think about it. My fiance and I were living in a home that had an extra bedroom in Colorado. Those who have had to deal with the housing situation in Colorado know how expensive it is, so we knew we would have to find a roommate eventually. At this point, we had been in our new home a couple of months and we were struggling to keep up with rent, utilities, etc. My best friend expressed interest in moving in with us and I was ecstatic. She lives across the country in the Midwest and I see her maybe once a year. Fast forward another month and we had planned everything. Her moving date, U-Haul that my fiance and I had helped her with, even a job interview. Literally the day before she is set to pick up the U-Haul and pack her things to leave, I texted her to see if she was doing okay and ready to leave. She responded by telling me she's backing out, she's out of money to get there, and she doesn't want to be so far from home. I couldn't believe it. I had invested so much of my time and energy to get her here, and now 2 days before moving, she doesn't think it's a good idea? Why couldn't she tell me this sooner? I was livid. I'll admit I should have waited to respond until I could calmly express my feelings or at least talk with my fiance about it, but I laid into her. I couldn't afford another month's rent without her portion, and now I'm in a position I was not prepared for. I told her that if she wanted to save our friendship, she needs to send me next month's rent or I'd cut her off then and there. She told me I was asking for her last bit of money she saved up and that I would leave her with nothing, but I told her she should have thought about that before I basically paved the way for her to get here. She did pay me. We found another roommate and we have since repaired our friendship. Now, we do live in the same city and I enjoy our time together. I will often pay for our dinners and excursions together because I still think about that period of time. Am I the asshole? Well, that's an interesting one. By the way, let's pull the scale back up. Here's the kicker, I think. This was a shit move, OP. It was a shit move because I'm sure that your friend felt an immense amount of pressure from you because she could tell that you really needed this to happen. She wanted to make it happen and wanted to make it happen for her and for you, but couldn't. Just couldn't. I'm assuming she hadn't signed any kind of agreement with you or anything like that, so she was under no obligation to pay you anything. What she ended up paying you, she ended up paying because she felt bad and obviously wanted to save the friendship. So it was shit to make her do that. It probably was a shit idea to pressure your friend into coming in the first place. And looking back at it, you may be like, oh, I didn't pressure her into it. But looking over the communication that you had with her, how much desperation came through, how much pressure came through. And even those things that you said were helping her about taking care of XYZ, doing those things also comes across as pressuring her to follow through and actually do it. Like setting up the U-Haul. You're like, okay, we've got everything ready for you. All you got to do is this. And now she's like, well, I don't have a choice anymore. I have to do this. And when it's that big of a decision and that big of a move, you have to make it their decision. Got to make it their decision. That's tough. So even though you had good intentions there, the desperation that you had and the fact that you needed her there caused enough pressure, even if it was subliminal, that putting your friend in that position was an asshole move. Now you try to make up for it now. That's the kicker. And that's the tough part for me is that now you try to pick up the tab whenever you can to make up for that time. I guess the question is, do you communicate that? Do you communicate now whenever you pick up the tab and try to make up for it? You're like, hey, I feel really bad. I feel like I was the asshole then, and I'm trying to make up for it. If you communicate that, I think that probably wipes a lot of the slate clean. If you don't, and she doesn't know why you're doing that and doesn't know that you have remorse for that and doesn't know that you're trying to remove the red from your ledger, I think you might still live there. Although you may be wiping it out on your own, you're not wiping it out with your friend. You need to communicate that to your friend. In this case, though, I'm torn because OP is doing things now to try to make up for it. If the specific question is, am I the asshole for making my best friend pay rent in a house she never lived in, then I guess we'll answer that specific question. And I think you guys are spot on here with the ascon 3. I think 3, it should have been done differently, is a thing. It might even be a 2. But I think the cool part about ascon ratings is that they can change over time. So while you were a 3 in that situation, holistically, if you have been making up for it since then, you may not be one at all anymore. It all, in my book, teeters on whether or not you have conveyed this to your friend, that you have regret, you have remorse, and you're trying to make up for it because you regret what you did. If it's month 2 and they're already like, we're not going to make it, this was probably a poor decision. And if you knew that you were going to be in the situation in the first place, trying to secure a roommate before getting into this house was probably the smart play, not after the fact, because that also increases the desperation and the pressure that you ended up putting on your friend to come fill that void.